Welcome back, Twisters. We've got some big news in Sharks territory today. Bob Boughner, as expected, has been named the team's head coach, promoted from the interim coach. He took that position once Peter DeBoer was relieved in the middle of last season. So he is the 9th official head coach in San Jose Sharks history. And in addition to this, the Sharks have actually made a couple of moves to their coaching staff. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Welcome to the show. If you're new, by the way, hit the big red subscribe button down below for San Jose Sharks coverage, including during this offseason. I've already made some videos about coaching and the offseason moves that the Sharks would probably have to make, so be sure to check those out as well. Now, Bob Boughner, coaching the Sharks last year as the head coach, was 14-20-3 with the team. That doesn't sound very good, but let's also remember a few things. First of all, Sharks had some big injuries down the stretch there with Couture, Hurdle, and Erik Karlsson out. Not to mention the team traded Barclay Goodrow and Patrick Marleau, and everybody on the Sharks was just having a poor season right from the get-go. So I assume that some of this is going to return to normalcy a little bit this next season, although it's not great when you look at the offense under Boughner. So the team had a 2.51 goals for average with him, 2.57 on the year, so a slight dip there. The goals against got a little bit better. It was 3.03, whereas on the season, I think it was 3.27. So nice job there with Boughner and the goaltending coach with making some improvements on the back end there. Now, speaking of goaltending, Yevgeny Nabokov is going to remain the team's goaltending coach. So that's good for Martin Jones, and that's good for any other moves the Sharks make when it comes to between the pipes play. So we'll see what happens there. Also, couple of key changes in the coaching staff. So John Madden, yes, the hockey John Madden, will join Boughner's staff, coaching the forwards and also the penalty kill, which was the league's best last season. Now, Madden played mostly for the Devils in his career, winning the Stanley Cup in both 2000 and 2003. He also played with the Blackhawks, the Wild, and the Panthers. Was briefly an assistant to the Panthers until he later on went to the Cleveland Monsters in the AHL and was the head coach there for 3 seasons. As for Rocky Thompson, he's the new defense and power play coach. So he had short stints in the NHL for the Flames and the Panthers, but he played mostly in the minor leagues. However, of note, he was the head coach for the Chicago Wolves for 3 seasons and previously was an assistant coach for the Oilers. Now, when he was with the Chicago Wolves, they actually went all the way to the Calder Cup finals with him. In 2019, they fell to the Charlotte Checkers, but nonetheless, he has a little bit of head coaching under his belt there. Now, Roy Sommer, who was an interim assistant for the Sharks, is actually going to go back to the Barracuda as their head coach. He's spent over 2 decades there as the head coach, so he's a very familiar face with the organization. Mike Ricci was also behind the bench during Boughner's interim tenure this past season. He will remain as a development coach for Team Teal. Now, a couple other points that I wanted to bring up as well. So Sheng Peng, he actually now runs his own site. He's previously from Fear the Fin. He confirmed that Doug Wilson, general manager, expects to spend to the cap this offseason. So the Sharks have about $14 million in cap space. They also have a couple of draft picks, a first rounder that they acquired from the Lightning, and an early second rounder. No word yet as to whether the Sharks are going to use those picks, trade them out, trade up in the draft. We'll see what happens. I'll have more coverage of that throughout the offseason. Also, per Sheng Peng, Bob Boughner has said that he expects systemic changes in all 3 zones this upcoming season. Boughner was a head coach for the Florida Panthers from 2017 to 2019, so 2 seasons there. But the Panthers failed to make the playoffs both years, and Joel Quenneville was hired, and even that didn't make the biggest of changes for that organization. So Boughner, he gets another chance with a system that he's already very familiar with an organization, very familiar with the veteran core of players there, many of whom will still return this next season. Thornton and to some degree Marleau, of course, are UFAs. But the Sharks are going to have to get some bounce backs from some of these key players. We'll see how Boughner manages his roster, manages the ice time for veteran players like Brent Burns out there, Mark-Edward Vlasic. And so, there's going to be a lot of interesting buzz around this offseason and going into training camps there. And as reported by the San Jose Mercury News and probably other outlets, this is not the first time this offseason that we've seen an interim head coach promoted to head coach. You can also think of Jeff Ward with the Flames, as well as Dean Evison with the Minnesota Wild. And interestingly enough, there never was really any chatter around the Sharks entertaining other head coaching prospects. I'm sure that Doug Wilson at least gave that some thought, but there was never any report of him looking to interview someone like Peter Laviolette, who now coaches the Washington Capitals, or some of the other coaches who have not been assigned to new clubs yet. We're thinking of guys like, of course, Gerard Gallant, as well as Mike Babcock. So yeah, that's going to do it for this story. Of course, I want to know your feedback down in the comments below. Do you think that the Sharks can actually make some headway or kind of return to normalcy with Boughner as their head coach? Or was it a missed opportunity to hire somebody like Gerard Gallant? Now, I've pointed out kind of the pros and cons of some of the other coaching prospects out there in a previous video. It's kind of nice to see the Sharks didn't go out and spend millions and millions of dollars on a new head coach like the Panthers did with Quenneville. So I think that the Sharks can now focus on actually allocating their finances toward building out the roster, because there are some big changes to be made there. The veterans already have a familiar face that they can work with, and I think the team was overall still pretty responding pretty well with Boughner as the head coach, and I appreciate his how candid he was with the media when they were going through their struggles. So I'm fine with this move, but of course I want to know your thoughts in the comments below. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this little report here from Sharks territory, soon to be technically Kraken territory. Make sure you stay in the loop by clicking the thumbs up, notifications bell, subscribe, and we'll have more San Jose Sharks coverage in this offseason. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. I'll catch you later. Ciao.